It's actually happening as the Toronto Maple Leafs experiment with William Nylander at center has seemingly come to an end as he is playing wing at practice once again. We're going to break that down and discuss what it means going forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We also have the Leafs making some interesting moves as they have made another move surrounding one of their top prospects. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, if you're part of the percentage that aren't subscribed to the channel, about 70% of you who are watching are not subscribed. We're on the road to 13,000 subscribers and trying to hit it before opening night in about a week. So if you want to help us towards that goal and you're a part of that 71% who aren't subscribed, hit that button. It would mean the world to Darius and myself. But Darius, we have a ton to go over today, and we're going to be focusing on a few things surrounding William Nylander. He was spotted playing wing at practice once again, and this is a little bit unfortunate if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, unless you're of the side that you want him to continue playing wing, which of course a lot of fans are. But you can see this here from Jonas Siegel. William Nylander is back on the wing again today at Leafs practice. So Domi, Tavares, and Nylander, assumingly manning that second line, but we'll break down the lines here in a little bit. But Darius, Nylander, it seems the experiment now, we made a video on this a little bit ago, a week or two ago. They seem like they were starting to be a little bit hesitant with him playing center, even dating back to the first preseason game where he started at center and then they took him out about halfway through the second into the third when they started letting him play wing again. What are your thoughts on this? It seems like they're really not bought into this experiment of William Nylander playing center, and we covered his comments in a recent video. He said he's good to do whatever it takes to win hockey games, but I would have liked to see them at least give him a chance at center just because it really stretches out that lineup a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like Nylander is willing to do whatever the team needs him to do, right? It sounds like he's up for the challenge and he's ready to do it. And I mean, why wouldn't you be if you're him, right? You have the skill set, you have the tools there. But it sounds like the team, and I say the team, but I think the coaching staff is not entirely in love with this experiment so far. But I don't think the experiment is done. I still think we're going to see this, and we're going to see it at times during the regular season. We don't know for sure if it's dead yet. We don't have comments from Craig Berube on it exactly, but we do have comments from him yesterday, and he said, they're still working through it and they're playing with things, right? So I don't think it's over. I feel like this has more to do with some of the guys are playing tonight, so they didn't have their full lineup to practice. So a lot of the lines will be showing don't really have a lot of NHLers in it, but it is a bit of nightmare fuel if you look at that second line right now with Tavares in the middle again and Nylander on the wing with Domi. Doesn't really have much of an identity to me. So I feel like it has more to do with them actually playing tonight and a lot of the prospects and some guys who are fighting for spots in that lineup, and they don't have everyone available for practice to really try that out. So I think it has more to do with that. I feel like it's not done yet. I still think they're going to give it a try and see how the lineup kind of works around it. And if it doesn't, then they'll figure it out, right? Because we see Holmberg kind of slotting into that third line center, which isn't horrible either. But, I don't know if I feel like Tavares could really thrive at a third line center position role rather than second line at this point. But we'll see. I feel like they're still playing with things in practice. Berube's made that clear. I'm not sure I personally want to walk away from this Nylander at center experiment thing yet, because obviously he's had maybe one game, Nick, I think, where he's played a full game at center so far through the preseason. So we're just doing the same thing we did even last year, right? And in the past before. So he needs more reps at center, I think, to really get comfortable. And I just don't think it's done yet. I still think they're really playing around with things and seeing what gels. I think they want to see what this line, for example, looks like in practice, just so they can kind of, cancel certain things out and be like, okay, it doesn't work, we'll move on.
Yeah, and again, there is a chance where it's not done, but the vibe I get, and I could be wrong based on the comments that were being made and just the way they're handling things, even in games and practices, are that I'm sure they'll try it out. But now I'm a bit less convinced than I was a couple weeks ago of William Nylander starting at center on the second line on opening night. I have a feeling that they might be relegating him back to the wing, but I could be wrong on that. Again, you mentioned it. Today's practice is not a huge, massive indicator, but it's more so all the comments. You mentioned Craig Berube, I covered it in yesterday's stream. The way they're speaking makes it seem like they're a bit more hesitant than we thought. Maybe that's because they're seeing other things in practice that we're not seeing. Maybe he's not as prepared for, and he is an elite winger in this league, so maybe they don't want to mess it up, and that's, I'm sure, what Sheldon Keefe, why they barely played him Nylander at center in the past, is because he's such an elite winger. But you're looking at the Leafs lines today at practice ahead of their preseason game tonight. You can see it here. It's Nyes, Matthews, Marner, Domi, Tavares, Nylander, and then they have some of the other guys, obviously Dewar, Holmberg, Reeves, and then the fourth line is no real NHLers at this point. But it's good to see Connor Dewar back practicing, and it's an interesting, there's some interesting lines, of course, going on here, but the biggest thing is the second line, Domi, Tavares, Nylander. You mentioned it. Nightmare fuel for a lot of people. By having Nylander on the second line, one of the most positive benefits of that is that you get to shift John Tavares down to the third line center, which is presumably where he's going to be, if not this year, definitely next year and into the future once he signs his extension and takes the pay cut there because he is getting older. He's still a very valuable player, and I think he's poised to have a very solid year. But most likely on that third line, his future is probably either a third line center or maybe a second line winger, depending on how things happen with their centers.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned with Tavares, I see him as a third line center at this point in his career. Yes, he still makes $11 million, but heading into the future, you want to get him into that role now because obviously if you have Nylander available and he can play center, but like you said, it doesn't sound like they're in love with that idea right now. Nothing suggests that. But I see him in that role. But yeah, I wouldn't take too much from these practice lines today specifically because half the team is in Detroit about to play a game, right? I would really look at Saturday's lineup. It's your last preseason game. It's your last look before you play the Montreal Canadiens in the first game of the year, and there's going to be some fireworks. We know that for sure. So it's going to be a fun game. But they're trimming their roster already, and they're going to trim it a little bit more before Saturday. And I think we'll have a decent idea of who exactly is fighting for what spot on Saturday, right? Because they're only going to have very limited practices after that. So I think we'll have a better look in the next few days. I wouldn't read too much into these practice lines, but there is something to having Nylander not at center all the time, because if they were in love with it, they would have him there all the time and it'd be working fine. So the fact that they're still playing with things could be a little concerning, but I still think that he needs some time at center unless there's something so egregious that they saw in practice that is like, yeah, he can't play center. But I think all the tools are there, so it's interesting. I think he needs some more time and to play in-game situations. He's only played one game at center.
Yeah, it's going to be a big experiment to keep looking at. And you saw I put this up while Darius was speaking. These are nothing regarding practice lines. This is some projected lines by some people out there. And again, at this point, you're looking at opening night. It's very close now. If you put Nylander at second line center, it really extends things down. I probably would swap Yarncroc and Robertson in this situation. But regardless of that, by having Nylander at center on the second line, it really helps lengthen things out, especially assuming Pacioretty is going to be on the team as well. So let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on the William Nylander centered, I guess, dilemma that the Leafs are facing at this point. But a couple other things before we move on now. We got some interesting details surrounding what happened with William Nylander and Mitch Marner, presumably last year when we heard him yelling to him at the bench. And now, of course, we have the documentary coming out. A couple hours ago, we finally know William Nylander's exact words from his viral moment showing his frustration with Mitch Marner on the bench during the game after the whole thing was mic'd up in his episode on Prime with David Pasternak. And you can feel free to read these for yourself. A lot of swear words that we're not going to get into. But he was really mad at Mitch Marner. It kind of just goes to show how important he is to the team. You see this here. This is why Nylander is the most important piece of the team, more than Marner, Matthews, anyone, which is debatable. You can't teach this. When it means more, I shift a little bit. Nylander explains, I think I become a different person in those moments. Nylander explains, basically asked about his shift when pressure is on there. So some interesting details surrounding that. He was really mad at Mitch Marner, and I'm perfectly fine with that. He is very good in playoffs. He performed in the playoffs last year, and he's a fighter, and I guess he came for Mitch Marner's head in that case.
He's always a performer in the playoffs. I think he's the best Leaf performer in terms of moments when you need somebody to come up big in a really high pressure situation. I think so far since all these guys have started their career in 2016, he's been the guy, right, in my eyes. And this quote is just another reason why I love William Nylander. And like that tweet said, right, why he's a big part of the team, because when the going gets tough, he shuts up and he plays, right? He just plays. And I haven't really ever seen William Nylander complain. He's easygoing, right, when he comes to the rink and with the media. And when it's time to play, he plays. And we saw it last playoffs too, when he did get into games. So love that quote from him, because it's true, right? When you're complaining about stuff in a playoff game like that, you're throwing your gloves. And I'm not, specifically calling out Mitch Marner, because there was other guys you could see complaining that game and not playing their best. You're distracted. You're not playing your best. The rest are not going to give you anything if you're complaining like that either. So I love how, Nylander was like, this is the problem. This is actually the problem. You need to shut up and play, right? So I kind of like that from Nylander. And the whole series comes out tomorrow. The Amazon documentary or series, whatever they're calling it, comes out tomorrow. So we get the entire thing tomorrow. So that's going to be fun to watch before the season starts. I think we're going to get a different look at a couple Leafs.
Yeah, and it's that time now. We have the documentary coming out, and then 5 days from tomorrow, opening night. And one quick thing before we wrap up, Dennis Hilleby was reassigned as well to the Marlies, the AHL squad. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. That was kind of expected. They have Matt Murray, they have Joseph Wall, they have Anthony Stolar. So a lot of different things are going on. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on William Nylander's comments and what your thoughts are on William Nylander potentially being moved away from center, because it's been the biggest question mark of training camp. And it seems that at least things are shifting that way. And hopefully we'll get some comments from Craig Ruan. We should soon regarding that, whether it's today or in the future. But that'll wrap it up. We'll see you guys tomorrow.